Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's seminar in the series of Outstanding Analytics Organization. I'm Sega Wasserkrug from the Informs Practice Section Board, and before we get started, I'd just like to say a few words about our section and our activities. Our purpose is to support and help advance the practice of analytics, operations research, and the management sciences. We have quite a few activities, including the several prestigious prizes, the Franz Edelman Award, UPS George D. Smith competition, Daniel H. Wagner. We have these monthly webinars and a monthly virtual networking happy hour. Our next happy hour actually is tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And we also have the section newsletter distributed semi-annually. So now I guess we can get started. This is today's webinar. I'd like to welcome our speakers, Jeff Day, who is a principal consultant in the global platform presale at FICO, supporting the FICO Platform and Express Optimization product suite. Jeff has held proud positions in transportation, healthcare, and software industries focused on optimization and simulation. And Dr. Oliver Bastert, Vice President of Product Management and responsible for FICO's analytics and optimization capabilities. Oliver started his professional career at Dash as a developer for the mathematical optimization software Express. So now I'll hand over the seminar to our speakers. Please put any questions you may have throughout the presentation or as Jeff and Oliver are answering other questions in the Q&A. Using the Q&A functionality, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. Over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, there we go, share screen and get this into slideshow mode so you can see slides, Sega?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So first thing, I want to thank Arnie and Sega for inviting me. They reached out and asked if I could talk to the practice session and really have two different topics that are interrelated today that I want to cover. First thing is, if you're an Informs member, what you know about FICO is probably two things. We have the credit score and we have the optimization solver, the Express product suite. And you've never really thought, like, why are those two connected? So I want to go through our history and connect the dots so you understand why it actually makes more sense than it might on the surface. And then the second topic I want to cover is, Sega had asked me, why are platforms trending? What does it mean to be a platform? And is it really any different working on a platform than it is business as usual? So I want to address that. So why is this the trend? What does it mean? And what does it really change in terms of the way that people work? So first, a trivia question, when was FICO founded? So hence, celebrities born the same year, Tom Hanks and Carrie Fisher, rest in peace. The number one selling album in the US was the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley's debut album, Elvis Presley. So I found a nice article. Bill Fair, Earl Isaac met Stanford in the 50s, that's a hint. Fair's a mathematician, Fair is the engineer, Isaac is the mathematician. With a bar computer, $800 and a big idea, they started Fair Isaac in 1956. So we go back a full 67 years now. And wrote letters to 50 largest lenders in the US. One company responded, what's the big idea? So I would call it two ideas. One is to do business to consumer credit rating. So prior, it had mostly been business to business, lending money to merchants, extending credit. The second was to use machine learning based on past and current behavior to predict future behavior in terms of paying bills. But they didn't call it machine learning. So another trivia is the term machine learning is credited to Arthur Samuel. He was an IBMer teaching computers to play checkers. That was in 1959. So I like to tell people, Fair Isaac, FICO is not jumping on the machine learning bandwagon. When we started, there was neither a band nor a wagon. In 58, they had the first system built, the first credit score, automated that in 72. In the 80s, they automated the credit account management systems. So if you think about credit score as a volume-based pricing product, the way to increase your sales is to help your customers, the banks, automate the system for onboarding. And so largely that's credited with the explosion in credit cards, is the ability to automate the originations and onboarding part. And then 1992, the Falcon Fraud Manager, so using AI for the credit card fraud. And so still today, if you look at credit scores, we have scores in like 30 countries. We have industry specific scores, custom scores for customers, that, and then fraud. I think our numbers are 65% of the credit cards in the world, 2 billion credit cards, 10 billion to 2 billion credit cards, 10 billion transactions a year. These are the two areas where we're recognized as a global leader. And so how did it evolve after that? So if you look at, 50s, 70s, we've talked about 80s, adaptive control for credit cards, insurance underwriting. So going from credit risk to other types of risk is a natural progression. Credit scores in the 90s, small business, profiling. So profiling customers and saying, detecting fraudulent behavior or suspected fraudulent behavior because this behavior is outside of your profile. It's uncommon for you in the 90s. And then in the 2000s, credit line optimizations. So FICO acquired Dash optimization in 2008. Dash goes back to 1983, founded by two guys, not an original story, Daniels and Ashford. Back in 83, #1 album was Michael Jackson's Thriller, King of Pop. Also #1 in 84, the top selling album of all time for trivia. But the early adoption of optimization at FICO was things like credit line increases, credit line decreases, embedding optimization and other solutions, and then expanding that to more industry agnostic use cases. So now we have optimization in almost virtually every industry around, but the first use cases were really banking specific, and Oliver could talk more to that. Continuing in the 2000s, insurance fraud, analytic systems for retailers and optimizing marketing offers, et cetera, in retail, more fraud, and then Blaze Advisor. So what used to be called Blaze Advisor, we acquired in 2002 from a company called HNC. It's now called Decision Modeler, but adding generic capability for decision rules, authoring and operationalizing decision rules in a business context. In the 2010s, notebooks and scorecards, so general AI ML. So notebooks, so that was acquired from a company called Infocentricity in 2014. The cloud was introduced, the platform on the cloud in 2014 as well. More fraud, more credit scores. So what I like about this slide is it shows the evolution, and it makes a lot of sense if you think about expanding from specifically credit risk, sort of a one-dimensional, one customer solution in 1958, to different types of risks, to different ways of servicing credit card customers, to general purpose industry agnostic tools for optimization, for business rules, for AI, ML, to a cloud offering, so hosting our tools in our cloud environment. It's a natural progression. What I think is interesting about it is it's the opposite of most software companies. So we had our first point solution for machine learning 50 years before we had a general purpose optimization solver, whereas most software companies start with the general tools. Then you find use cases that are repeatable, then you start building solutions on top of those repeatable use cases. So it's an interesting story to me in that way. Other thing is, I say evolution of scores and software. So we do have exactly two business units. So we have two EVPs that report to Will Lansing, our CEO, one business unit of scores, and that is the credit score. It scores in the 30 countries. Again, small business credit scores, industry specific credit scores, and custom credit scores for our companies, for customers. And one of the questions that Arnie had asked me is, where are the analytics professionals in FICO? And so the scores, it's a lot of data scientists, a lot of software developers. We deliver scores of software, and a sales team, but that whole side of our business is heavy analytics, right? Heavy AI, ML. On the software side, we have developer like Oliver's team. So we have developers for optimization. And so this is fraud, this is originations, this is the general purpose tools. And then we have Scott Zoldi and his team. So Scott talked last week at the Analytics Business Conference about responsible AI, and he's been a big champion of that for several years. So Scott's team does a lot of the AI and ML that is embedded in our solution. So the continued special sauce or intellectual property for things like fraud, a lot of that comes from Scott's team. And then we have professional services. So we have people who are implementing our solutions and our software for customers, both AI and for optimization. And then people in sales who are helping to sell it. And so enabling customers, enabling customers and partners. So we have a lot of analytics professionals, sort of scattered throughout. We don't have a single analytics function. We align to business units, and then in some cases to the specific types of solutions, specifically optimization or AI ML. So the next question is, so what does it mean to be a platform, as opposed to, I'm going to say by contrast, a collection of tools or a collection of point solutions? And so for us, when we talk about the platform, and it's a word that gets used for a lot of different definitions, but for us, it means our tools in our cloud, in our hosted, managed environment, cloud environment, in a way that is interconnected. So there's a lot of additional connective tissue that we can provide for our tools in our environment. And so we really think about the cloud more as offering capabilities as opposed to offering tools. And so if you look at the evolution of technology, and so you have things like cloud computing, you have microservices, APIs, containerization. All of this is sort of enabling a different approach to building analytics solutions. And so we think about these different pillars of, if people want reusable code, and I have customers asking, how do you do reusable code? The way to do that is really to separate data ingestion from the models, the insights, from how you operationalize the outcomes, from your governance and your visualization and your reporting and your UI. So historically, we would build all of that in one piece of code, and then it kills usability. But now, because of what we call interoperability, the ability for different solutions to talk to one another in the same environment, you can think of data as its own set of services, and the ability to build a model and then go back and say, I want to feed this model a file, or I want to feed it a data stream, or I want to feed it a query. Being able to do that in a way that's very seamless and increasingly no code, load code, so that now you can reuse your code, and if you parameterize it enough, you can reuse it a lot, especially if your solutions are similar. Being able to do that across the board, with and what we have at the bottom, things like observability. I want to know what I'm running. I want to collect performance metrics. I want to manage my events. I want to schedule. I want a single layer of security for everything. I want to manage my life cycle and deployment. And you can do all of that in a platform much, much better than you can do it in a collection of tools. Right. So I'm trying to talk very general here. Why, so why is this the way to go? One is it's the natural evolution of our business. So all software companies who provide AI tools, optimization tools that have a comprehensive collection of tools are saying this makes more sense for our customers to put this together into a single platform. If you think about analytics organizations or organizations with an analytics function, and I'm thinking about companies like Caterpillar and Mayo Clinic, they're both part of the Informs Roundtable. They have built their own platform. So why are companies building their own analytics platform? It's really to solve the IT problem. So historically, we would come up with a point solution and we would go to IT and say, I wrote some Python code. I need you to put a front end. And half the time IT is not prepared for it because accounting doesn't do that. Legal doesn't do that. Like most of the people they serve don't come to them with half of a solution and say, we need you to build the rest. So in order for that to scale, and I've heard Dan Rayom from Caterpillar talk about the Caterpillar platform, in order to handle all of the streaming data from the Internet of Things, right? So we want to apply analytics to data streams coming in, not single static data sets. They built their own platform to handle that. Janine Kamath from Mayo Clinic has talked about, she did one of these webinar series. She has talked about, in order for us to scale and operationalize our analytics in an environment that's consistent and repeatable and governed and secure, we felt like we needed to build our own platform to connect to our EHR service, electronic health record service, and to surface our end products, our solutions to our users. So if you look at the software industry, we provide professional services because a lot of our customers can't operationalize or build products and solutions in our tools, right? You offer, rapid application UI development, so Express Insight for us, because a lot of customers struggle once they built the optimization to put a front end on it and get that in front of their business users in a way that makes sense for optimization solutions, so scenario management, et cetera. You offer cloud hosting because a lot of our customers can't host. They don't have the IT infrastructure to host. So you're doing all of this to increase your customer base and better serve the customers that you have. The platform is just an extension of that same natural philosophy. So we have more customers that want observability. They're asking about, do you monitor performance metrics? You can do that in a platform. You can create an event store. You can store that. You can query that now as a data service. They want the interoperability, right? They don't want to have to pay professional services or third parties to come and get our tools to talk to each other. So we can build a lot of that to better serve our customers. Security is the deal breaker. So if you look at, most IT organizations, the first thing they're going to ask about is security. They want to talk to our security team, make sure that it meets it's good enough. And security reviews have gotten brutal, right? I mean, they want to know every open source tool we have and the version number because they know where the vulnerabilities are and they want to check that out. So you have to make the business happy. You have to make the analytics teams happy. You have to make the IT happy. And more that is becoming a platform philosophy and a platform approach to analytics. And I say analytics and intelligent business decisioning because of the decision rules and things like our customer contact solution. And so this is, kind of what we're driving at. So one of the questions then is, what is the business looking for? So we've talked about what analytics teams want. We've talked about the tech stack. We've talked about the evolution of software vendors. We've talked about what IT wants, but this is what FICO is hearing from our customers, and many of them are banks. What are they looking for? And so things like business composability, we want to be able to add, create multiple solutions that are connected and coordinated. Personalization. So banking is an account-centric industry, and a lot of their account strategy revolves around communication. So we can do texting, emailing, customer communication as part of an analytic strategy, and what we call personalization or hyper-personalization, because you want that to be connected, right? So if we're contacting you for fraud, if we're contacting you for we've increased a credit line, we're contacting you with marketing offers, we're contacting you with, hey, do you want a coupon to Starbucks because we see you go to Starbucks a lot? You want to manage the frequency of that contact. You're now talking about a suite of solutions that have to be connected and coordinated. You don't want 20 point solutions reaching out to your customers randomly with no coordination. And the last thing is the open ecosystem. You can't have a self-contained platform. You have to be able to talk to third-party vendors, data sources, databases, customer resource management tools. So you have to be able to talk to everybody else. And all of that's driven by APIs these days. SegEd have been asked, what's the difference between working on a platform versus working, in tools, asset repositories versus code. If I run on the platform, I don't have to download, I don't have to install products. I don't have to download somebody else's code and get it working and compile it. I just point at it on the platform and it runs. So that means now we have interoperability. I can point to different products, I can connect them, and they can talk to each other through APIs. We call that orchestration. So being able to take different microservices, drop them on a canvas, connect them and point and click, so that now I can map the output of process A to the input of process B. That's becoming more and more efficient. So now you have much more of a true low code, no code environment for the orchestration, for the interoperability, to connect all of the different pieces together for reusability. And so now you can develop with reuse in mind, right? So I can develop my data streams as a service, my models as a service, my UI as a service layer, my reporting as a service layer, as opposed to thinking about I have to build the whole thing all as one single piece of code, which enables collaboration between different developers. So developers taking on different parts of those tasks and being able to stitch them together very efficiently, as well as collaboration between business users and data scientists in a shared platform where we're not sending code back and forth or files. We're actually looking at the same solutions in the same environment and sharing, specific scenarios, specific runs of specific solutions. Taking advantage of elastic computing. So the big promise of cloud is I don't have to have a high performance cluster with very tight access that I control. And if I'm running a big job, I have to go to everybody on that server and say, don't run anything today because I have a big job running. Elastic computing says I can scale my operations, I can scale my testing, I can scale my metric tuning or my parameter tuning in a way, and it's really up to the cloud provider to manage that. It's not up to me to manage that or buy new servers if I want new surge capacity. Lifecycle management, so being able to promote, my optimization model from testing or development to staging or testing to production with appropriate guardrails, so with appropriate governance, but being able to do that versus the old days when we would literally compile code and email it to somebody, and then they get an email and then they VPN to a customer site and drop a piece of code in a folder. And that's how we would operationalize analytics. So that's much more seamless and integrated these days. Versioning, and I'm thinking now versioning from our developers publishing updates to the software on the cloud, being able to do that in much more of a true continuous development, continuous integration paradigm. So things are fixed, we can push it, pushing hot fixes, etc. All of that's becoming much more seamless. Behind the scenes, you don't have to manage, and what IT doesn't want to do, IT doesn't want to manage updates, right? They would like us to do it. Observability, traceability, auditability, accountability, tracking that in a homogeneous way, in a standard uniform way. And again, being able to query that from an event store or similar data mechanisms that are collecting and surfacing all of that performance data, so that you can query it yourself. And then finally, troubleshooting. So instead of support saying what operating system, what version, I just tell them, go to this workspace, look at the solution. They have all of that information themselves. All right. So usually on the platform, if I run into an issue, I get an email either saying, try it again, or I get an email saying, this is the error you got. This is the fix. This is what you need to do to fix your data or your code to make it go away. So I'm not spending time on Zoom calls with a support person saying, do this, try that. So I can do other things. I'm freed up from that process. And so the last people I'll talk about is who's driving the platform. It's the architects. And the architects really think about it this way. So I think this is the best picture. And this comes from our architecture team and what we're driving towards, where the business users are at the top in solutions, it's the tip of the iceberg. All of your reporting validation on top of a repository of assets, and then your data services, your model services, your third-party open standards and communication, and the ability for your developers and IT to manage security, observability, event management, et cetera, all in the bottom. But what the business is seeing is really just that very tip. But what below that is a single iceberg, not a collection of pillars. So I will stop there. That's what I wanted to cover, and I will turn it back over to Segev for questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeff, for the great discussion of the company's histories and activities. I've learned quite a lot from this, and I'm sure everyone else has. Now, before I ask several questions I have regarding to the analytics organization, this is the folks in the company. I'd like to remind everyone of the Q&A functionality so that people can input their questions regarding the presentation or regarding anything else they'd like to ask. Please go ahead. So many companies struggle with the challenge of how to recruit and sustain and maintain their workforce, through training, mentoring, ongoing support, and so on. Could you please share with us your approach to each of those challenges, especially, and what you think makes a difference being the type of company FICO is with these two different business units?
Yeah, so probably I can take that first and then let Jeff weigh in on this. So in general, I think we are in a very special place. So Jeff presented, we started as an analytics company, and now we are a software and platform company. And that makes it pretty exciting to the need to be analytically minded and also connected to software and that technical interest. And due to the history, we still have a lot of this analytic spirit in FICO. So analytically minded folks joining FICO will feel at home. So I think that's why it's a really exciting place and people are interested in working for us. And then sometimes it's just, well, there's the FICO score, there's fraud analytics where we're leading on this optimization. So it's really exciting things to work on. And then we got rated like one of the top employees from mid-sized companies by Forbes 3 years in a row. So there's a number of things why people look at FICO in the analytics space to be interested. Then going to your questions in detail. So you said recruiting, I believe. We have all the standard things like posting job announcements, internal, external recruiters. So I guess that's just pretty standard. We join events, so like Informs events. We have been present in the April Informs conference. And so we have contacts to the communities. We collaborate with universities. We offer internships. So with this, again, analytic candidates are aware of what's going on at FICO, and very successfully is recommendations from employees or people we know on analytics talent. Second one was training. So we have special training programs for joiners from college. We have rich internal training material and resources, and we also have budget for external training programs. And to use that example again, so our analytic employees can travel to events and use that for further training as well. On the mentoring side, I think it's generally very important. So when you start at FICO, we have a so-called buddy program. So you're assigned like a buddy for the first couple of months to coach you through at the beginning at FICO. And then we have an internal mentoring program. So this is from FICO employees to FICO employees. And then the next step is you can also benefit from external mentors if you like. So that's I've tried all of those variations, and it's really successful doing that for us. And then the last one is how do we support our expert workforce? Yeah, and to me, this is creating a research analytic environment for those people. We being in a product organization, we have like tons of processes, and I think that's a good example. So for our analytic development teams, we are trying to reduce the processes to a bearable minimum so they can really focus on the analytics work. And I think that's really working out. And since we have so many analytics people in FICO, this is appreciated. And I think we simply generate this environment to keep them happy. Jeff, anything you want to add?
The only thing I was going to add is a lot of crosstalk. So I'm in pre-sales. I'm in regular contact with professional service. I'm in regular contact with the developer teams, and so all the different optimization functions we have. You don't have these hard silos, and so if I need help, there's actually a mailing list for optimization that if you're in Express and you need help, you just send it out and you get 5 responses usually within an hour, and the right people responding. So I think that's a big support piece. In addition to what Oliver mentioned, is it's very easy to reach out internally and get support when you need it. You're not trying to find the right person on your own. And I found that very effective. So that's the only part I wanted to add.
Maybe a brief follow-on question. So do you feel regarding the support, so do you feel that there is a challenge, keeping these people constantly interested and motivated in new types of problems and new approaches, or don't these come across?
I think so I'd say for people in professional services and sales, the advancements of the products, like it's enough to just keep up with all the new features as they're being added. As well as the internal. So if I want to learn, analytics workbench, if I want to learn decision modeler, there's enough products to learn that go beyond optimization that I'm certainly not bored, right? It's not like I've mastered it all. We have one product. I'm never going to master our product suite. So I think that's part of it, at least from the sales and PS side. I don't know if Oliver, if you have anything else for the developers.
Yeah, I think for the development side, we are at the forefront of research. So I think that makes it constantly interesting, and it's just so much exciting stuff to do. Basically, I've never heard that someone got bored. I mean, that's the least problem we have.
Okay.
Never heard that. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question. So we Inform is trying to support students in this field and early career professionals, and our feeling is that the required skill set has changed in today's world. But we wanted to hear from you. What are the skills that you're looking for in new employees? Any specific skill sets, training, experience level?
Yeah, so just from the background, we're looking for a typical analytics, data science, industrial engineering degree, but also mathematics or physics. So this is really a widespread. When we interview, I don't want to go too much into details there, but from a technical perspective, like if you're looking for an optimization modeling consulting job, we are expecting you to build an optimization model in a language and environment of your choice, but we are really trying to see, based on your level of experience, that you actually can build a model, and that's similar throughout the rest. Then from a more personal perspective, I'm looking for talent, so I'm a great believer in training talent to do the job good. I want that people are excited about analytics. Yeah, so this is crucial. And that they're also team players. So it doesn't work in a modern environment to not be a team player. So you can be the most excellent analytics person. That's just not working. Then to me, it's also a combination of theoretical knowledge and hands-on programming experience, if you will. If you're lacking the hands-on programming, that will be tough, but you can also train that. But there definitely needs to be a willingness to both of those jobs. And then I think FICO is a place where you need to manage your own destiny. Yeah, so it's you can achieve a lot, but it should be driven by yourself. So I want to see if people are willing to do that and take the opportunity there. So this is I talked about what degrees, I talked about what I'm looking for in people. And then there's the other extreme. If you want to become like a mathematical programming research and developer for us, there we're expecting a lot. So basically that you have done successful research in the area and have also worked on a commercial or an academic / open source solver before. Yeah, so that's like a very high entry level, but it works for everything. Yeah, and I think that's it. Yeah, Jeff, anything from you?
Yeah, just do that. So from the sales side, when we look at early career people, and we've hired a couple recently and interviewed some, it's almost like you have to have a certain background to sell optimization, right? That's just a sort of a non-negotiable. But when you get on and you make people do a presentation that's salesy or a solution, a lot of it is really how you feel about that person after the call is over. And do you wish the conversation was still happening, or were you glad it was over and you've been waiting for it to end for 10 minutes? Which sounds harsh, but it's really that, like, are you connected with the people, right? So when I see you talk, do I want to talk to you more? Not at a social level, but at a professional level. Is this somebody who's going to resonate with our customers? And so that's something that's very hard to teach. It has a lot more to do with somebody's general character and the way they express themselves and the way they come across, stage presence in the music world. But it's critical, right? And that's a critical differentiator from the people who are maybe super book smart but don't have that charisma or that presence.
Okay, thanks. Another issue, another question, right? We heard from many organizations that retaining analytics talent is challenging. Actually, we also saw, maybe less now, but during the COVID couple of years ago, when people were constantly moving and looking for new jobs and so on, is this is this an issue in FICO? And if so, how do you approach this, retaining the analytics talent?
Mm-hmm. I think so. One thing was we were already, now I talk about the optimization research and development team for a second. We were kind of already prepared. We have a very distributed team. So suddenly working from home or and benefiting from working from home or wherever you wanted to live was something we had established already. So that wasn't so much of a change. It was a change in some parts of FICO, but I think in the analytics side, we already had established a lot of this. And then I think the main driver, what keeps me happy and what keeps analytics folks happy, is just interesting stuff to work on. And what Jeff pointed out, with colleagues, you want to talk about this. Yeah. So, and we have both. And while we definitely have sometimes people leaving, a number of them are coming back. Yeah, so it sometimes looks greener somewhere else, but it's a really high rate of analytics people coming back to FICO because we're doing something right here. And then FICO felt for a long time as a family business, which gives you also a good environment to work on. And we're having programs for women at FICO. We have now in the software segment our executive leader is Stephanie Covert. She's driving this forward, and she's driving general cultural, social progress, diversity programs. So I think it's not so much looking just at the analytics people, but as an organization, we are making great progress, which makes generally people want to stay at FICO.
Yeah, and so I was gonna talk about the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, if Oliver didn't mention it. So we do have a very good team. I know them personally, and I participate in a lot of their seminars. And again, that's not just targeted analytics, that's the whole culture. But with Steph Covert at the top, you see more women leaders now. And so you hope that you're promoting the true best people, and that people aren't leaving because they feel like they've hit a glass ceiling for artificial reasons, right? For the wrong reasons. The other thing I would say about Oliver's organization is we recently had 15 years of Express at the FICO and 40 years of Express. So 2023, so it's been 40 years. The number of people who go back 15, 20, 25 years was incredible, right? Like the number of people at 25 years who survived the transition from a solver only company to a FICO, to a much larger company, was very impressive. So that was what I took away from that one, just slides and reminiscing. But it was really nice to know that we have that much core talent that's been here that long.
Okay, great. So I have a lot more questions, but maybe I'll also take some questions from the audience, and then if we have time, can return. So Zohar has asked, are smaller companies realistically able to use this platform? I work with smaller companies, and some tools have too high a price and learning curve for my clients. That was Zohar's question. What's your experience?
It's a great question. So on the learning curve side, that's something we are driving down and down. We want, with the platform, to make things easier to adopt, so that learning curve should become smaller and smaller. On the price, we are currently focusing on large enterprises, but over time, we will make this much more accessible for medium-sized and smaller companies as well. Yeah, so that's our plan, and it's a fantastic question.
Yeah, so what I would add is it's not a one price for the whole platform, right? So there is an a la carte, and there is, right, can I host optimization in your environment, and can I, so there are smaller pieces, and we recognize that there's this ability to incrementally expand. So you don't have to get decision modeler, you don't have to have, notebooks, etc. So there's a lot you can do without jumping into the whole thing. And a lot of our customers, not every customer has the entire product suite. And I hope we didn't present it as you have to buy it's all or nothing. So it is you can increase the capabilities over time, as opposed to thinking about if I'm not doing everything from decision rules to AI to optimization to customer contact, it's too much. If you don't need something, you just don't get it. You don't pay for it. It's not part of your particular solutions.
Okay. So Robin has asked, how does FICO approach keeping their technical team trained on the latest ML, AR, OR developments?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's pretty simple, by being leading researchers in that area. Yeah, so we have just on the optimization side, it's probably easiest to describe. We have a research collaboration with the Konrad Zuse Institute. We have several research and developers of that team have a shared position, part-time at FICO, part-time at universities. So we are very much involved in driving research in that area forward. And with this, we are also obviously learning ourselves. And very similar, to pick another one, is probably fraud analytics teams with Scott Zoldi. He's also a recognized leader in the area, and he knows or drives some of that research and innovation personally, and with that, the teams are kept current on the latest research. The other
and I would add,
and one thing, there's time to educate yourself on top of this with latest technologies as well.
And our teams do present. Our teams that go to conferences will present. This is what we saw at the conference that we thought was interesting. That's a new trend, et cetera. So there is some of that sharing. So if everybody can't go to every conference, there is some summary of conferences that we share internally to keep abreast for exactly that reason.
Okay, great, thank you. Folks, attendees, please feel free to keep the questions coming. We will return to some of our questions, but we still have time to answer also other questions. So what do you see? We talked about, actually, this I think is a good follow-on to both questions. What do you see, as the new directions, as the next direction for FICO? What are the next challenges or the greatest growth opportunities?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, Jeff presented FICO's analytic decisioning platform, and that's our path forward. Yeah, so we want to optimize consumer interactions across all customer decisions. That's what we present, and that is a significant task ahead of us, but it's also rather simple. Yeah, so that's our future. That's what FICO going to be. If you look at it like one level down, that means we need to continue enhancing our AI and analytics research and the respective capabilities. So we're continuing on that stream. And then since we're building this platform and enhancing this platform, we need to continue doing so. And the trick bit to make that successful is that the innovation we put out there is easily usable, it's reliable, it's for analytical models, it's responsible, and deployed on the platform successfully for that customer decisioning process. And that's hard, yeah? So that's a both analytically and technically challenging problem. And if we continue getting it right, as we do at the moment, and progress, that's the growth opportunity we have ahead of us. And just bringing this back to people for a second, I think that was part of the response to the first question you asked, Sergey, but I think for analytics people, it means this openness to both analytics excellence and a deep technical IT understanding and appreciation. So, and coming from this analytical background, I find that still challenging, and it's the biggest success, isn't it? If your analytics are used by people or used in a business context to make improvements. And that's why I think this combination is so important for the success of FICO, but also for personal satisfaction to see analytics in action.
Yeah, and so what I would add is, we are historically a finance-heavy company. And so we do have people in all kinds of industries, but the amount of in-house expertise we have in finance and banking is huge. And so a lot of our growth at a platform level to other industries will be spurred by a partner network. And so FICO has said, we're not going to turn into GE and have a whole bunch of different verticals, right? And a lot of those verticals GE is divested and sold off. So the way we're going to grow, instead of trying to hire everybody from every industry, is by building out and enabling a partner network that has that expertise in different industries, and growing through resellers, through partners, both for services and for selling software, and finding the right partners to help us, if we need to tailor the platform for different industries, to be able to do that with the right knowledge base. But we're not trying to grow our headcount at the same rate that we're trying to grow our customer base. And I think that's an important distinction. And I think that it's becoming, this type of outsourcing or collaboration is becoming more and more common as companies realize that they can't do everything.
Great, thank you. Now, the next question. So in many cases, or in many companies, the analytics team have to work with various groups, right? IT, marketing, financial services. Now, in FICO's case, based on what you described, the analytics professionals have to both work with the internal FICO teams, right? The IT, marketing, but also with the client team. So how do you approach these challenges? How do the people approach these challenges? How does FICO approach these challenges? We're working with external companies and the different stakeholders there.
Do you want to go first, Jeff, this time?
Yeah, so I think from it actually gets back to the first of how you hire. So you have to hire people for sales and professional services that have a degree of empathy. Right. And so you can't hire somebody who's like, I have the right answer, listen to me, that's the final say. Right. And so you have to be able to go into an organization, understand first what they need, what are they trying to accomplish in their terms, and then say, okay, what are the appropriate tools or services to apply to that. So a big part of it just starts with how you hire and hiring the right kind of people. I think another big piece, especially with IT, is, we could do a lot on our platform because we have total control. We don't have control of everybody else's space, but we like recently we had a customer that wants to do optimization in a smart cluster, and we don't have that out of the box. So I have to go to our product team and say, we need to get the right people who can talk about how do we build binaries, exactly how are we hooking our binary, how are we calling our licenses, where do the licenses have to sit. So there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of back and forth between sales, the product team, and the support team on our side, and the analytics team, the IT team, the business team who's driving this on the customer side. So you end up in calls where you have people from 3 or 4 teams from both organizations trying to talk through all of this and figure out what are the right action items, what are the right steps to take, who needs to talk to who. And so it's that willingness to collaborate and not saying we don't support that, right? So that's the killer for this type of collaboration that you're talking about, Segev, is we don't support that, we don't do that, tell them no, right? You want to say yes whenever you can say yes. And it really means, calls with 12 people, figuring out, how do we move this forward, and what's the next, what's the concrete action step we can take to move this at least one step forward, if not get to a acceptable solution.
So probably one piece to add is that one of the drivers for creating the platform was to make IT happy. Yeah, so many analytics projects struggle. You have your great analytics results, and then you need to deploy them, and your IT department is in the way. But once you have all your analytics on a platform which is built as an enterprise platform to satisfy IT as one of the goals, this becomes much smaller. I'm not saying it's trivial, and everything Jeff said is still correct, yeah, but it takes you a long way. And then the beauty is, and that's also again the platform, that once the platform is deployed, the second project goes like super easy because IT does not even need to be involved. Yeah, so you really take them out of the picture. I don't want to make IT my enemy now, but from an analytics perspective, that's the main challenge, and we are we are really trying to minimize that as a risk for analytics projects.
Okay. Another question from the audience. Arnie has asked, what is the most challenging analytics technical area you see for FICO?
I think it's for us, it's not a specific area. So let's take ChatGPT. Yeah. So I think that's a good one where we are not sure how much we need to invest and understand that technology and the implications. So that's probably the most prominent current example. And for us as a commercial company, the hardest problem is to decide which technology or which challenge or solution out there in the research or in this case from another commercial vendor is the one we need to invest in. So I would say that's the constant problem, because we don't have the luxury to say, hey, we are now just looking into this, and if there's no result out of it, it's not ideal for a commercial company. So I would say it's with every innovation or potential research direction, we want to be able to judge as good as possible if that has business impact further down the road.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines of if you look at like AI platforms and things like Gartner and stuff, some of them have requirements for you're doing instant machine learning and you're doing computer vision and you're doing natural language processing, right? And those last two are areas where I don't see a lot from our customers saying, you know, we need this. We did acquire a company, I think in 2019, that does authentication and authorizations based on scanning faces. And there's a patent to make sure that the face is a live person and not a static image or a cadaver, I guess. But we're not huge in computer vision and natural language processing, even though those are huge technologies now. And I think it's Oliver's point is, when is that something that our customer base is going to support? Or when is that something that's going to open us up to a new customer base that would benefit from the rest of the platform? So I don't think we're going to take a hard left turn and just say we're now a computer vision platform. We're not going to do self-driving cars, right? We're not Tesla. But knowing when is that value add really there and not missing an opportunity that's completely valid, that's in line with the rest of our product offering.
Okay, thank you very, very much. So we have no more questions from our audience. So I want to thank you. We all want to thank you for this very interesting informational webinar. And this was really great. I learned a lot, and I'm sure others have too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.